viewers. Africa's oil-producing nations have not been spared the impact of the global decision to reduce oil output. About 14 countries in sub-Saharan Africa produce oil, which accounts for most of their annual export income. Crude oil prices rose marginally on Friday, May 1st last week, as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies started reducing output. Major producers in April agreed to a production cut deal by 10 million barrels a day in May and June. The record production cut is a way of balancing the mismatch between supply and demand in global oil prices due to the coronavirus pandemic. The COVID-19 outbreak has reduced demand for oil due to isolation and travel restrictions measures introduced globally to slow down the spread of the disease. Africa's major oil producers include Nigeria, Angola, and Gabon. A rise in oil prices between $50 to $60 per barrel would allow them to earn badly needed foreign exchange to carry out development projects. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have urged African oil-producing nations to diversify their economies to reduce their overdependence on oil to improve the living standards of their people. And this morning, we continue our conversation in the Economy and Politics show as we look today at COVID-19, focusing on business and economic sustainability in Nigeria. With me to lead this conversation is Mr. Ayuli Jemide, lead partner, Detail Commercial Solicitors. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yes, nice to have you discuss sustainability for businesses and the economy in this time.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Before we begin our conversation, I found this interesting picture on your handle, and you said that to keep your sanity during the lockdown period, you needed a kayak, and you paddled it for 2-3 hours every day around your residence where you live. I mean, if you can see the picture now, it's very interesting how you did that during the lockdown. So we'd like to just get your experience so far as the lockdown begins to ease. How did you manage that?
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. I've always liked to be on the water, so every weekend and every now and then I'm on a boat going to Takwa Bay or somewhere. And after 2 weeks of being at home, not being able to get on the water, I started thinking there must be a way. And then I thought about the kayak. There's water behind where I live, so I thought about the kayak, and I got a kayak delivered to me on the waterfront, and the rest is history. Wow.
And you were alone all this while, I mean, because, across developed clients, you always have people on the coast guards to watch out in case of anything. But you're an expert in that.
The kayak takes only one person also, so you are your own.
Well, thank God at least you were able to navigate it, and it's a good experience for you, managing the period.
Good experience, great exercise.
Yes, great exercise, nice. We can see it, looking very refreshed. So let's look at first the easing of the lockdown, yes, in Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State. And the major concerns have been around managing the informal sector, because Nigeria has a very huge informal sector, and the ability to comply with the guidelines for reopening the economy, because these people are daily wage income earners, and they are really concerned about how they can continue to sustain their livelihood. But so far we saw Monday and even Tuesday concerns about following the guidelines around physical distancing and the hygiene measures, transportation, interactions, even crowds at the financial institutions like the banks. What are your thoughts around these concerns of managing this reopening phase for the economy? Some people are even saying that we may have to go back to a lockdown since people are not following the guidelines.
Well, also this is one situation where you are torn between saving lives and saving livelihoods.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting situation because both of them are intertwined, and both of them are important. If you don't save livelihoods, you will eventually not save lives, right? If you don't save lives, there won't be livelihoods. So, and the informal sector is very important. This is a sector that accounts for 38 trillion of 38 trillion naira in the economy. Right, IMF says they account for 65% of Nigeria's workforce, right? So I think the key thing here will be how do we get this balance? Because, these are the most itinerant people, right? Yeah. Your electricians, your tailors, your mechanics, these are people who are always moving around. They're commuting, they're going to, get somebody's car, they're going to take somebody's measurement, they're going to fix somebody's fault in the house. So they will come in contact with a lot of people as they commute, and as they serve their clients. Even those who sit in shops will get, hundreds of people come every day to buy one thing or the other, right? So the economy has to keep going, but at the same time, we have to save lives. Interestingly, there's no case study on this. We've never been down this road before, though, right? So it's not a situation where you will come up with a case study, but we can see what the other countries are trying to do, those who are ahead of us on the COVID-19 curve, right? And they've been sensible about certain things, right? So in South Africa, for example, they have a timetable for people to go out, right? Just to make sure that everybody knows out on the same day, right? And they have to take some permits from your local government, for the day you are going to go out so that they're monitoring, right? But again, this will work where you have a database, right? So if you don't have a database and a lot of these people in the informal sector don't belong to the unions, where you can use the unions to track them, then it gets more difficult, right? So what I would say is government needs to do more in terms of education, right? Some of these people don't believe that this virus exists. You understand? Yes. Even if they believe it exists, they'll tell you, well, it's like malaria, hydrochloroquine cures it. We've been having malaria with black people, all that. So there needs to be more education, and I think that we need to educate people in the languages they can understand. We need to communicate in pidgin English, outside Yoruba, Igbo, so that people understand, about wearing masks, the essence of social distancing. There's not much of that going on out there, apart from, on TV and things. These people don't watch TV, right? So I think that's we have to let them come out in a coordinated way and then educate them. I think if we do that, we may be able to get the right balance. Okay,
I hear you very well on the need to improve communication and sensitization, particularly for those in the huge informal sector, on the ways of ensuring that they follow these guidelines to balance this saving of livelihoods and saving lives, which is very critical at this time. But let's look at the businesses, because they are also globally and in Nigeria managing commercial disruptions as a result of COVID-19. We're seeing some now taking that step of cutting jobs, like we see Virgin Atlantic, 3,000 jobs, AB&B, over 1,000 jobs, even Karim, one of the thriving Uber-driven companies in Middle East, announced over 500 jobs will be cut. So these are ways they are approaching it, managing the disruptions. Other companies are looking at pay cuts, and others are even looking at downsizing, and this is a challenging time for businesses. What would you be saying to them as a business leader too, to manage this phase and ensure sustainability in their operations?
Well, I think the first thing we need to realize is that we're in a period where people just need to survive. Right? Businesses need to survive. Individuals need to survive in terms of their livelihood, and we all need to survive in terms of just staying alive. Right? So I think the key word here is survival. Right? So businesses will be trying to survive, and in trying to do that, they may need to to retrench people and things like that. But I think that if we all come to terms with the fact that we are all victims here,
yes,
and we take a victim mentality in dealing with everybody, right? I mean, it's nobody's fault that COVID-19 came on and oil prices dipped, right? So I think all the stakeholders, workers, business owners, government, we should all, take that approach, right? Which means that people should be open to things that they didn't plan for, as long as we can all survive, right? Yeah. Staff should be open, to taking pay cuts, right, for a period, if that is what will make the business survive. And employers too should look at, creative ways of making sure that they keep their staff in this period, because this is something that it's going to be here for a while. Yeah. By the time it's over, you start hiring new staff. You train them. It will still cost you money. Yes. Right. Yeah. So there has to be creative levels, both from staff, from employers, from vendors and contractors. When the first majority where people are going to tell you, sorry, you gave me money, but I need to be open to giving people time extensions. Banks need to be open to giving people interest waivers. Right? We just all need to come together and be open with each other as victims concerned, and find a way of just finding a middle way, right? If government, for example, would say to employers that, in this period, you can defer your pension obligations, what that will do to the wage bill at the end of every month. Yeah. Things like that. And then staff will say, okay, this is a tough period, cut some of our allowances and all that. You don't need to come to work every day, right? For those who can work remotely. Yeah. You don't need to come to work every day. It cuts your commuting bill, right? It also, if the office shuts down a few days and you work remotely, for those who run generators and buy diesel, it reduces your costs. So I think this is a time where give and take is very, very important, right? But that said, we should look on the bright side. It's also a time when we should be very opportunistic, because a lot of new businesses will grow out of this. So people sitting at home will then decide that, that IT outsourcing they've been meaning to do, this is a time to do it. Right? IT outsourcing accounts for 20% of the service sector in India, right? And it's people working from their homes, right? So that this will be a good time. The delivery business will make a lot of money at this point in time. People don't want to move around, right? So we will have more what they call staycations as opposed to vacations, where over this next couple of years, people will decide that I don't want to go to the UK on holiday. The COVID numbers are too high there, right? So it could boost our tourism industry in the sense that people will decide to go to ranch or something, right? So some things will come out of it, right? Including the educational sector. Some people will begin to look at their budgets and say, well, I can't afford to send my kids to school in the UK at this time, right? So I think we'll be fine. I think that the average Nigerian, particularly the middle class, we always live above our means. That's the truth. So somewhere along the line, when things like this happen, there are always adjustments that people are able to make.
Yeah. And it has to be like in a win-win situation between employers, employees, and business strategies. Should have everyone's interest at heart. Okay, well noted. Now let's look at like the national interest and the concerns. The National Bureau of Statistics released its report this week, published on ProShare, about the poverty rate. Now it's 40.1%, showing that 82.9 million Nigerians are poor, and that this is coming at a time of a pandemic which is adversely affecting our economy. We've seen the oil prices down. We read in this morning report about the World Bank and IMF advising Nigeria and Gabon oil producers to aggressively diversify from crude oil dependence. And you see, when you say diversify, we're looking at revenue because the economy is already diversified, but we need to begin to look at diversifying our revenue dependence on crude oil. There are limited policy options at this time for our government. They have rolled out palliatives. From your assessment, what should be the key steps policymakers, fiscal and monetary, should be focusing on to help really reflate and reposition our economy? Because we are facing a situation of challenges for companies, unemployment, and then we're seeing poverty rates going high. We want to avert a social crisis, Mr. Ayuli Jemide. So what would you be saying to them at this time?
I think the first thing we need to know, we've been talking about diversification for decades, right?
Yes.
For as long as I can remember, from when I started reading newspapers, this word diversification has always been something you read in newspapers, diversifying the economy. And I think that this is a great opportunity. And I think that a lot of times when we say that government should, diversify the economy, we fail to realize that the private sector should be leading that effort, right? Yeah. Because when we talk about diversification of the economy, we're really talking about oil. And oil is government money, right? Yes. It goes to the government coffers, right? It contributes 10% to the GDP, right? Yes. But if the private sector grows other aspects of the economy, it will still go back to government by way of taxes. Yes. Right? Yes. Which is a form of diversification because, it's all about income and expenditure. Yes. Right? So if some sectors are doing so well that, they are posting, greater taxes to government, right? It's diversification. Yeah. Right? So I think that from a government standpoint, if we begin to talk about this diversification we've been talking about, that's a long shot, right? Because like I said to you, we've been talking about this for decades, right? But let me tell you this, some things will naturally play out that will lead to this diversification, right? So today, your agri sector accounts for about 22% of your GDP, right? Now, take a census, call around, okay. You will find out that a lot of people in this period have started planting things in their backyards. We have in my household, right? We started thinking of what we can plant. And that's just at a small scale. So you will see a lot of people go back into the agri sector, right? Either as a business or for subsistence, right? So I see over the next few years, over the next 1 year, you will see, mark my words, that the agri sector will contribute more to the economy, right? And if government can track taxes out of there, that will be good. And in this period, technology is moving forward. You will see a lot of new businesses come out, in that regard. And interestingly, ICT is about the third or fourth contributor to our GDP, right? At about 10.8%. Yes. Right. So, diversification will just begin to happen organically, right? But it's left for us to track it and see, how it begins to happen. That said, I would like to say that the federal government giving cash to people is something we should stop. It's not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable. You can do it for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but you can't do it forever, right? Go back to what I said about agriculture. If you give people seedlings as opposed to cash, it's a better way to go. Give people inputs, right? Give people inputs. Encourage people to start, small fish farms, right? And give them, the inputs, not necessarily cash, right? I think that's what we need to do in this period. If we're able to grow our food basket as Nigeria, you will bring down the prices of food, and you will cushion inflation, right? And you will deal with poverty. The basic thing about poverty, the first step about poverty is food, before shelter and other things, right? So, and that's a low-hanging fruit. We have all that it takes to just go back and plant.
Very important. I mean, you've talked about the fact of diversification. I was saying that we've talked about it for over 2 decades, but it's time to really diversify our revenue base because the economy is already diversified. And I agree with you that agriculture can play a very key role and ICT as technology. But let's also look at the states. I know that your company, you've done several projects with states, and this period will be challenging for them. Income, internally generated revenue, paying salaries, managing their subnational economies, and even going on with real-time infrastructure projects that should have impact on the citizens. I mean, the Delta State governor was in an interview over the weekend saying that there will be challenges in terms of the revenue. Crude oil price is down, and Delta is among the top earners. So there are obligations to meet up with infrastructure projects that will have to review it. So based on your experience and interaction, how would this impact states, and how do you think they can really begin to rally investments, particularly to private capital?
Okay, so first and foremost, like I said, this is a time for survival, right? Yeah. And it's only the citizens that should be thinking survival. States should just be thinking about how they will survive, right? And I think that if you listen to what the government is saying, they're doing quite a bit to try and cushion the effect of states, right? Yeah. Some of the loans they are giving them to pay salaries and all that, they're deferring the deductions in this period, just to help them cushion. But the states themselves too need to see themselves as an economic entity, right? And they need to take wise decisions. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned infrastructure projects, right? So infrastructure projects, some of them need to be deferred. Some of them need to be put on hold, right? You need to decide what your priorities are, which would be, to make sure that your staff salaries are paid, to make sure that healthcare is funded, and a few other priorities, right? Some of those roads that you want to fix, they won't be fixed for donkey years. It won't kill us if you don't fix them for the next 18 months or 2 years. You understand what I mean, right? But that said, you would realize that Lagos State, for example, houses maybe up to 10 to 15, maybe 30% of Nigeria's population. Yeah. Because I always say that Lagos State is probably 30 to 40 million people if you count the people that come in every day to work and go back to Abeokuta.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
You put all those together. Lagos doesn't really need FAC. If you look at the statistics, right? They don't depend on federal allocations, right? So if a state like Lagos, that doesn't depend on federal allocations, houses that number of people, then it's not as bad, as we may think, right?
But Lagos in the report from the National Bureau of Statistics, in terms of poverty, is the least, 4.50%. But looking at a state like Sokoto, which is the state with the highest poverty rate of about 87%. So for states like that in the Northwest, who are in the high poverty index, they really need to think out of the box how to manage the situation and even help citizens cushion the effect of this pandemic on their livelihood.
Subsistence. Sokoto is very valuable, in terms of agriculture, there are a lot of things they can do, right? Subsistence, they should put the citizens to work, right? In the agric sector. I know that they want to create jobs, by doing some strategic road projects and all that. But the reality is that those road projects, a lot of the money in the foreign companies will eventually go out of our economy, right? And it will help a few people who are working on those projects, right? But if we look at subsistence, and I keep hammering on this, bottom line is food sufficiency. If people are eating, then poverty is not such a big issue, right? Once you've eaten then you have a roof over your head and healthcare. Those are the key things.
Okay. Food, healthcare, and shelter, which is very key. I've taken note of that. So let's look at creating an enabling environment for governance for businesses at this time. And regulators have a key role to play here. What would you be saying in terms of speeding up ease of doing business? We know that the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council has been working, and even this period, despite the fact that the disruptions has come from the pandemic, they're still working round the clock, interacting with stakeholders and policymakers, pushing the National Action Plan 5.0, though it can be physically pushed, but they're having interactions around it. So what would you like to see happen more in terms of easing the business environment in Nigeria, which is very key at this time?
Well, also, the reality is this, right? Long time ago, we should have eased the business environment by turning to technology. And this is a great opportunity. And I'll tell you why I say so, right? So, in a country like Dubai, majority of what you do with government, you don't see anybody.
That's in Dubai, United Arab Emirates.
Yes,
Okay.
you don't see anybody. Yeah. You send in your application for anything online, you track it, you get your permits online, you don't need to see anybody. And people are tracking how long it takes for you to get a permit, because it's all online, it's transparent, right? I don't need to go to anybody's office to say, how about my file? Yeah. And then somebody will ask me, well, you didn't drop anything yesterday, that's why your file didn't move, right? Yeah. So, if we use this period to just, harness technology, it will definitely improve our ease of doing business, right? I mean, Nigeria is one place where you can get on a plane from Lagos to Abuja to see a regulator for a 10-minute meeting. Because they just believe that they can call you and say, come tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Right?
Yes.
So all that needs to stop. Don't call me again. Let's get on Skype. Tell me what you want to tell me.
Yes.
Right?
A new way.
There are people who travel, and Nigerians do this a lot. They go to London for a meeting, have the meeting, come back that night. They fly wedding, then come back BA. Right? And sometimes you wonder, now we begin to reassess those things. We begin to ask ourselves, was there any need for those travels? Right? We have been traveling for 2 months, 3 months. What has happened? Nobody has died from not traveling. Yeah. Right? So I think we need to harness technology a bit more. In Kenya, for example, all the land registry business is digitized. You sit in your house, you can file anything you want to file online, your mortgages, your whatever, right? So if we head in that direction, it will make a lot of difference.
Wow. I mean, Kenya's experience is remarkable. Land registry is one thing that, if digitized, can really transform our economy in terms of land, real estate, the agro sector you're talking about, which will diversify revenue for us.
We already have this first virtual judgment in Lagos State.
Yes, yesterday.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yes, I saw it.
If I told you 2 years ago that the judge will give a judgment
I would not.
I
would.
Right?
Yeah.
So we need to borrow relief from events like that.
Yes.
And judges are the most conservative people.
Of course, very conservative.
On Zoom, then regulators should be willing to have meetings on Zoom.
Yeah, adjust to the times and the reality.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, looking at the outlook in terms of business, even for you in the solicitor space, what should we be looking at going forward? I mean, post-COVID-19.
It's not going to be a walk in the park, but it's not as bad as people like to paint it, right? We've seen those times in this country. I mean, crude oil has gone up, crude oil has gone down, and like I said earlier, also 10% of our GDP. Yeah. If the private sector leads up to the billion and increases our GDP and gets more creative, rather than rent seeking. Rent seeking is going to stop because rent seeking rules economies, right? If I can go to Abuja and go and sit down in someone's waiting room because my uncle gave me a note, and then I pick a piece of paper which I can walk out and sell at the gate, right? Yeah. Why would I want to work? Why would I want to set up a business, right? So in this period, rent seeking will stop because government doesn't have that kind of money any longer to give you LPOs. Even you don't want to go and get an LPO because you don't even know where you'll be paid, right? Yeah. So when rent seeking stops, the private sector will then have an opportunity to step up, right? But I think the government, I listened to the Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister of Finance yesterday on some platform, right? And I think they're doing the right things, right? I mean, what we need to do and what all businesses are doing, and government is a business, right, is to expedite income, and delay outgoings, right? Yeah. And just do the right things. It's not rocket science. So we see a situation where government has said, they will delay some non-critical projects, right? So that they don't put money out there. The new debt they are negotiating, they're negotiating it on softer terms, including moratoriums. They're accelerating some projects to create jobs. Getting 150 million USD from the sovereign wealth fund to cushion. They're pushing the levers here and there to just make sure that they do the right things. And then most importantly, they've reduced the budget, right? So, we've been telling them, private sector has been saying, your budgets are too high, 6 trillion, 7 trillion, 8 trillion, but, organically, we can see that, they're reducing the budgets, they're resizing the oil benchmark. So they will do the right things. That's not people, they will do the right things. As public sector, we need to do our own bit as private sector. And the last thing I will say to let people know that it's not as bad. When we talk about debt service, it's a continuum. Yeah. Right? Yes. So when people say Nigeria owes, X trillion, it doesn't mean that we have to pay that amount today or tomorrow or next year or even the year before. Look at your Euro bonds. Yeah. Right? They are well spaced out. Yeah. So what you need to do is service the coupons and then raise my debt to take out the principal, when they become due. So it's not as bad. It's not as bad. And just to give you some indication, if you look at in February, government released money, and COVID has started in February. COVID started in December, right? Yes. If the government raised money, your Naira bonds that they auctioned, yes, it was 250% oversubscribed. Yeah. Right? So government is still a credible borrower, and any country in the world will borrow themselves out of this maze, right? And Nigeria will not be any different.
Wow. Well, time to reset our economy, time to really get our priorities right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayuli Jemide, a notable Nigerian commercial corporate lawyer and lead partner of Detail Commercial Solicitors. Thank you for discussing with us around COVID-19, business and economic sustainability. Indeed, we have to reset our economy. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and that was the conversation on COVID-19, looking at business and economic sustainability in Nigeria, and we had Mr. Ayuli Jemide, the lead partner of Detail Commercial Solicitors, discussing around those issues. We'll continue our conversation by 10 a.m. on Market Review, but for the meantime, you can go to our website, www.proshareng.com, to get our news, market, and reports that we have today. Also, this period of COVID-19, we give you incisive analysis and data on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our country. Log on to www.proshareng.com/COVID-19, and you will see all our trackers showing you the developments that we have at the moment. Join us by 10 a.m. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.